From a highly secure network of top secret locations across South Texas, this is the Spurs Insider. Season is underway. We're ready to talk about actual games instead of off-season nonsense. Maybe we'll have some in-season nonsense. I am your host, Mike Finger, joined as always by Express News Spurs beat writers Jeff McDonald and Tom Orsborn. Last week, we left you with 3 predictions of what the Spurs record would be the next time we all convened. We even gave specific predictions as to which games the Spurs would lose and which games they'd win. And for the first time in Spurs Insider podcast history, I think every prediction came true. We've got it all figured out, guys. Jeff, you feel proud of that you saw this coming?
Of course. I'm a freaking genius.
The Spurs lost their opener, won their home opener, then fell to the hated Rockets in a rekindled bad blood rivalry in the second of a 2-game series with the Rockets. It's what we expected, but also a lot to get into. Some little wrinkles, some little developments that we didn't see coming. We will start with the big fella who a few hours, just 12 hours or so before we're recording this, we all spoke to at the Frostbank Center. And Tom, he sounded like you sometimes sound when you're under the weather. Yeah, how do you think Victor's doing?
I feel for him, and it's a trend at this point. I don't know what it is, but I mean, like many people in South Texas, he suffers, and yeah, I mean, it's not the first time he's had it. He shrugged it off, but he definitely wasn't feeling too great.
What do we think about his start? It hasn't been an alien, all world, just take the internet by storm start in terms of highlights and stats and all that type of stuff. He's been solid, but I think another thing that we predicted in previous podcasts is that he wasn't going to be anything close to midseason form after his light preseason and busy summer. And Jeff, he is not close to midseason form yet.
I mean, we saw this coming in, right? Pop even told us at the end of the preseason, he's not going to start the regular season in good rhythm. And we can argue over the reasons for that and whether the Spurs could have mitigated that or not. I don't care. I understand both sides of that question, but Victor has not started the season in good rhythm as we were told he would not. Even so, and even though we expected it, it's kind of a letdown though. Everyone's been looking forward to Victor back on the floor and picking up where he left off last season and seeing all those highlight reel plays and monster stat lines. And like for him to only have 14 and 20 last night, it was a little disheartening.
It's crazy. What a credit to him though. He's had games of 29 points, 20 rebounds, 4 blocks, and we're talking about him being less than great.
Going into the fourth quarter of the second game against Houston, he was, challenging from like maybe the worst game of his career. He had 5 points going to that fourth quarter. If he had been stuck there for some reason, that would have been a career low. And then he ends up, like you look at the end of the game, 14 and 20 with 4 blocks. Still hasn't shot it well, really in any game. Maybe that second Houston game he was all right, but so not very efficient, but the numbers are there. And like he was a big part of that fourth quarter comeback, in that second game against Houston. He made some big plays in that rally.
It's a bit tough for him to have 2/3 of his schedule so far this season. Well, I guess 1/3 of it against the defending Western Conference champions, who have 2 pretty solid centers in their rotation. Play some decent defense under Jason Kidd, and then 2/3 of his schedule against the team in the league that probably does the best job of defending him in his one season and 3 games so far in his career. I will say this about Dylan Brooks, who nobody seems to like for understandable reasons. He does have a history of, I think it's fair to say, clownish behavior, whether it's his confrontations with LeBron or whatever. But nobody in this league, nobody that I can think of, wants to guard Victor Wembanyama. Like it's sort of a no upside proposition, because even the big guys who like playing defense, it's like you run the risk of getting highlight reeled. And he's this guy. It's not that Victor Wembanyama is unstoppable, but you're signing up to be on the wrong side of a video clip or a poster or whatever. Like, it doesn't seem fun for anybody to want to do that. Dillon Brooks is the one guy in the league who really seems to enjoy it, and he's giving up like 8 inches on the guy, and he revels in it. And I just, as ridiculous as Dillon Brooks can be at times, and he was ridiculous at the Frost Bank Center a couple of instances over the past 3 days. Like, I gotta give credit to that guy for signing up for it and going all in on it. Like, he really wants to do it, and he does have a knack for bothering Victor.
And the Rockets are sending doubles and triples like from the jump. Like, he's getting a lot of help, and the doubles and triples are coming from different angles and places, and Victor's really got to think it through. And the Rockets in those situations are just betting the other Spurs won't beat them too badly. And it's a good bet at times. I mean, if you look at really the times when the Spurs played well in the 2 games against the Rockets, it's when those other guys stepped up and did some stuff. In the first game, it was Julian Champagnie knocking down some early shots, and Harrison Barnes knocking down some shots, and Sochan's been great in both games. And then in game 2, surprisingly, it was Malachi Branham who kind of shot them back in the game in the fourth quarter. So when the other guys are stepping up, it makes that strategy a little more easier to beat, I guess. The other thing is Victor can help himself too, and a lot of the stuff in the first 3 games. Give credit to Dallas, give credit to Houston, but it's also shot selection and getting to spots that are better for him versus worse for him. Not making things harder on himself than they need to be. And maybe that goes into rhythm and timing and just getting all that back after the long summertime layoff.
I think there was an example of that with about 2 minutes left last night when Sengun had 5 fouls and Victor's out on the perimeter with him one-on-one and pulled up for a long 3.
It might have even been a long 2, Tom, which is sort of worse.
Yeah. There was one earlier.
He probably regretted that decision.
Yeah.
There was one earlier where in the fourth quarter where the Spurs got it to 5 for the first time, and Victor comes down and takes like a 30-footer with 15 on the shot clock. Like, there's just no need for that. Even though he can possibly make it, there's no need for that.
This is becoming the Bash Victor Wembanyama podcast.
On the flip side, you can never doubt his confidence.
That's right.
You can never doubt his confidence. I kind of laughed. Okay, in the preseason, in the 2 games he played, he was like 1 of 9 from 3. I believe against Dallas, he was 1 of 8 in the opener from 3. And the first shot he takes against Houston in that first game against Houston was from the logo, and he made it. That's
not an exaggeration. Like, you hear logo 3 just as
his left heel was on the Spurs logo.
Yes.
And he made it. He made it. So I mean, like, and people in between those games, the Dallas and Houston games were talking, Victor needs to get in the post. He needs to make it easier. He doesn't need to be taking the first shot he takes is from 30 feet. It was amazing.
If we want to go positive now, we've kind of harped on we've been nitpicking with Victor. I will say unabashedly that I have been super impressed with young Jeremy Sochan through 3 games.
Speaking of guys that makes people mad for obvious reasons.
Yeah. But like
Dillon Brooks of the Spurs.
I mean, that's a funny comparison, but like the upside is there with this kid. And I was thinking during one of those Spurs Houston games the past few days about how quickly we forget that there was a point not too long ago when Jeremy-Sochan was the highest draft pick the Spurs had taken in what, 20 something years?
Yes, that's correct.
And like he just based on that, he's supposed to be one of the most talented young players ever. And because of a variety of factors throughout his first 2 seasons in San Antonio, I think that's sort of gotten overlooked that this is a talented player with some upside. And these first 3 games of this season have sort of reminded everyone of that. Like, I don't think he's ever going to be an all NBA player, but he's a legitimate guy to build around as part of this nucleus when his head's on straight, when he's confident, when he's in the right role. And he's doing a lot of fun stuff for this team. Even this team's 1-2. He still has his moments where, he doesn't finish a shot at the rim, where, his jumper still doesn't look awesome. But like there's a really nice skill set on that player. And I think the Spurs are thrilled with what they've seen from him so far.
I think go ahead, Tommy.
Well, it all boils down to just letting him be him, kind of.
Yeah.
He's back to that one-handed free throw now too. After,
Yep.
It's like just whatever works for the guy, whatever he thinks works for him, just let him do it.
It's completely a role and fit thing for him. If you have him in the right role with the right people around him, and just let him do this batch of things that he does really well: cutting, rebounding, pushing the pace when he gets that rebound, defending. Not asking him to create anything. He's actually a good passer. I know a decent passer, a passable passer. I know the point guard experiment last year did not go well, but if you give him the ball on the break, he can make some plays that way. Like, he has a lot of skills, and if you just ask him to do these things that are in your wheelhouse really well, be a role player, he's really shown. He showed that as a rookie too, in my opinion. Really, the times where we lost track of who Jeremy-Sochan is and what he can do is when the Spurs lost track of who Jeremy-Sochan is and what he can and cannot do. But let's go over the rest of the start to his season. In Dallas, he gets his first flagrant foul.
Yep.
That's the season opener. In the second game, not really his fault, but there's the Wemby, Dylan Brooks little brouhaha, and Jeremy's in the middle of that, either breaking it up or inflaming it. I don't know which one. And then he gets the double tech with Jabari Smith last night. And then he and Fred VanVleet get into it coming off the floor after the game. Like, he's in like mid-season form when it comes to that kind of stuff.
And Saturday, shoot around, it's the bleep Houston comment.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. He's bleeping Houston. Like, I don't know. Sometimes I wonder, do you think Pop heard about that, the bleep Houston, or do you think they don't? I think
people were wise, probably not to alert Pop to that. Going through that, I will defend him on the.
I'm not even saying it's bad.
No. I'm not even.
To be honest, I kind of like it a little bit.
Defend is the wrong word. I will say about the flagrant in Dallas that was a result of his reputation. I think there's a lot of players who wouldn't have got a flagrant on that.
Oh, I don't know.
In walking out of the arena that night with Jeremy, I asked him, is there any way you were trying to finish a layup with one hand and thought to slap a dude's face while you're trying to finish a layup with your left hand? And he said, bleep no. But he also said, he said there's no way that's a flagrant. But he also said, it's probably not going to be the last one I have this year, and it might as well get it out of the way. So he's got a good sense of humor about it. He's got a good sense of humor about his little tiffs with the Rockets. Asked him after the first Rockets game if he was aware about who, like, Charles Oakley was, the old enforcers of old that would step in for the superstars, and he said, yeah, he was aware of that, and that he would step in there for Victor, because that's what it was. He was jumping in to defend Victor in that second game. And then after the third game, the second against the Rockets, I think Jeff might have asked you, are you glad not to see these guys anymore after seeing them twice? And he was like, I wouldn't mind seeing them again. He's just got a really cool attitude
I
about
like
being.
when someone asked him last night if he takes the trash talk personally. He says, "No, never." But I think they do, which
Exactly.
funny little dig too.
And that's a sign of how effective he is at it, is if the other team is more bothered by him than he is by them, like that's some success there. Another facet to his strong start, we asked Victor last night about we've seen multiple through 3 games and 2 last night pretty quickly, in a short frame of time, of lob passes from Victor Wembanyama on the wing to Jeremy-Sochan finishing the oop dunks. And Victor seemed real excited about that, even through his sniffles and his head cold and whatever it was. Like, his eyes kind of lit up talking about, I think he said it's a new important dimension of our offense to be able to kind of flip it inside out like that and have Victor on the outside throwing those passes to Jeremy on the inside. He was really complimentary of Jeremy and saying that, he's not a center, but he can jump as high as one. And if they can get that part of the offense going, that adds a whole new dimension. And I really thought that was cool. I've seen, I think, maybe 3 Victor to Jeremy alley-oops so far this season. And
they did it in Miami a couple of times in the preseason.
Yeah. And
it was a
go ahead.
It was a very interesting answer from Vic, because I remember part of the quote was something along the lines of it solves a lot of things for us.
That's what it was.
It solves like a double team. It solves the double teams, because we can work around that. And like you said, Jeremy is quicker than most centers, but can still get up to the rim like most centers. So that play is available, and he's making himself available for those plays. So it was interesting to watch. I think they did try it a third time, and it didn't work out. I think the Rockets got wise. It's almost it's almost like a trick play in football. You can only run so many times before.
Sure. But I think one issue with the tallest guy on the court,
unless you're playing the Cowboys.
Good point.
One issue with the tallest guy on the court, the center, what have you, shooting 3-pointers is on a lot of teams when that happens, there's nobody under the rim. It's just everybody on the wing, because the big guy is gone outside the arc and there's nobody down there, and there's really no threat underneath. So the defense is kind of all around the outside. It doesn't need to worry about underneath. And what Victor is saying is, if there's that threat of Jeremy still being down there while Victor is on the outside, like, that's something for the defense to consider. It can't rush 2 guys out of Victor on the perimeter. And so even though the third one didn't work on Monday night, the Rockets were thinking about it. Like, they cannot give up another lob to Jeremy. And there's all kinds of permutations, all kinds of plays that can come out of that. I think establishing that early in the season could be beneficial down the line for the local Cagers. We've done 17 minutes, something like that, on Victor and Jeremy. Who should we discuss next, Jeff?
Oh man, you put me on the spot. I don't know. You want to talk about the rookie?
Oh yeah, that's a good topic.
He's been really impressive. Not in the second game against Houston, but okay. But the first 2 in Dallas and the first game against Houston, really pretty special.
Yeah, I think he's going to be, and to start with, I think the first encouraging thing is how much Greg Popovich already is relying on him. Like, that Greg Popovich, notorious for not trusting in rookies early on. And from the beginning, like, he's out there in crunch time, important minutes I guess there was no crunch time in Dallas, but he gave him important minutes at Dallas. in the closing minutes of the Spurs' first victory at home against the Rockets.
Yeah, not the second one, curiously enough. But
the Stephon Castle was part of the crunch time crew, and he's had his rookie mistakes, but really impressed with the way to use Chris Paul, Tom Orsborn pet phrase, the calm he has in some of these bigger moments. He does not seem to force anything. He's willing to make the pass, and in fact, he seems to want to make the pass on these drives, and just defends like crazy, which is what they expected from him. He's made a couple of jump shots.
His defense is really something special, and it's not even just something. Maybe sometimes you just have to sit there and watch him for a possession. Like, it might not be even gets his hands on the ball, but it's really special. There was a clip I watched at the end of the game they won against Houston, kind of in the last minute, when he was on the floor and Houston needed a basket. And the three guys at the top defending all this were Victor Wembanyama, Stephon Castle, and Wemby-Sochan.
Yep.
And Houston couldn't figure it out. They kept running pick and rolls, trying to get somebody open, and it would just go here, and like Vic's got it covered up, and it would go there, and there's Castle, and it would go there, and finally I think whoever it was ended up just having to jack a shot clock contested three over Steph that didn't go in. But like, you can see what they're thinking with their last three drafts, really, in that moment. Those three guys all defending at once are pretty tough. Like, on paper, they should have a pretty good defense at some point. I don't know when that comes, but on paper they should have a pretty good defense. Since it's we've already got 3 games under our belt, and I know you love to talk about these sorts of things. Is Steph the front runner for Rookie of the Year now?
Oh my God!
I'm just kidding.
Tom, what do you want to talk about?
I'm just kidding. I was messing with you.
They had much different routes, much different backgrounds, but I think of Derek White, Pops. It was a project of his for those first, well, I guess until Derek left, really, to convince him you belong.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, the routes are much different, but with Steph, there's no you belong at all. He knows he belongs. Yeah,
Steph knows he belongs.
Yeah. There's no getting him past that self-doubt. So
I think he's going to be a star. I don't know what I mean by that, but I think he's going to be a star.
Yeah, he may.
Holiday, maybe like a Drew Holiday, when he's 26, 27.
Bigger.
I don't know.
He's bigger.
He's bigger than Drew Holiday.
Yeah, I think so.
I mean, we're not going to say Kawhi, but
no.
Maybe
my favorite Steph Castle play so far this year, and there's been several, but it was midway through the victory against the Rockets in that first game at the Frostbank Center. He had played Steph Castle defense, grabs either a rebound or a loose ball under the basket, and is going to the floor and fires this ball. It turns into like a full court hockey assist. He fires this outlet pass from under the basket, falling down to Malachi Branham, sprinting up the right sideline, who then lobs a pretty perfect alley-oop pass to finish off a fast break. That's Steph Castle seeing a pass ahead from the total opposite end of the floor of the Spurs basket. It's just like he seems to have a knack for knowing where the ball needs to go in those situations. He's done a lot of other stuff too.
Yeah, he made a skip pass late in that game against Dallas. I don't know, people might not have even noticed because the game was already out of hand, but it was like a skip pass across the lane to Malachi Branham for a 3 that like went right behind some Mavericks guy's head. And it was like not the pass you expected him to throw. He throws a lot of passes that you don't expect him to throw, and yet after he does it, he goes, "Oh yeah, that was the right pass." And I'm never going to put anybody in the Manu Ginobili category when it comes to that. Like, he's one of one, but that's one of the first things I noticed about Manu when I started to be able to sit like on the floor and see things from floor level, and there'd be a pass where like that. How did he even see that? You get a little of that from Steph Castle.
We're making huge comparisons.
No, I'm not saying they're the same. I'm just saying
no, that's good.
He's like the JV version of that.
we've
NBA
gotten
should
this far.
adopt that hockey assist with the NHL. I think they should.
What's that, Tom?
I think the NBA and the NHL share seasons. I think the NBA should adopt that hockey assist stat.
Yeah, there you go.
If we're talking about rule changes on assists, I think if you
get a free throw,
yeah, I mean you can't do it now because it would just mess up all the record books, I guess.
Right.
But I still think that was always not fair. You make this amazing pass, and it's so amazing. The only thing the defense can do is just hammer the guy you threw it to prevent a layup, and you don't get any credit for it.
Just think if they made that change, how aggrieved, how upset, or aggrieved John Stockton would feel. A man with so many grievances these days.
That's true.
About people doing him wrong.
He would, he would probably do his own research and figure out how many more assists he should have had.
He probably would. He would do. He's something about his own research. Speaking of point guards, we haven't mentioned the future Hall of Famer who is now the starting point guard for your local Cagers at all today. I don't think. What's the Chris Paul experience been like through 3 games?
I think it's fun. It's fun. It's kind of like I was talking about earlier. Every so often there'll just be that's how a textbook pick and roll is supposed to be run. I had forgotten over the last couple of years, but like he had one to Zach Collins last night in Houston. That was just textbook. Just run the pick and roll, throw a bounce pass through traffic, dunk. It's also just fun watching him. We've talked about it before, but just coach. He never stops. Even when he's out of the game, it never stops.
He's a budding sports editor too. I asked him about the the overzealous attempt by the African Dylan Brooks to wrestle the ball away from Wemby, and he the sage veteran that he is, he says, "Don't make a big deal out of that."
Yeah, y'all seen worse. You remember Steve?
Good.
You remember Steve Nash getting knocked into the scores table, coming up all bloody?
Yeah.
How many other players in that locker room would have been able to reference the Steve Nash Robert Horry hip check?
He might have been the only one.
The doggone scores table.
Well, that's what I was gonna. I wanted to.
Chris Paul was in the league when that happened.
Yes. Tom, I wanted to check with you because you are the best transcriptionist maybe in the league, and you're really good at listening to the audio, at poring over the interviews and getting the exact wording. I wanted to check with you on that. Was it dadgum or doggone scores table?
No, it was doggone. Yeah,
doggone.
Yeah.
Which was just great to hear. That's how you know you have a 39-year-old in the locker room when the quotes are full of the phrase doggone.
Yeah,
it was pretty good. Steve Nash slammed it into the doggone scores table. Pretty great.
Don't make a big deal out of that. I said, I'm not. He says, come on, NBA players, come on.
We did see him in crunch time 2 nights in a row.
Yeah,
a little bit. I don't know if that's really it's gone. I mean, they won one, lost one. I don't know if the whole thing has been as seamless as you would want, but it's early, and probably still better than last year.
Yeah, the one they won was one in which they'd given up we're on the verge of giving up a 22-point lead and hung on, and that's good that they hung on. That's great. Like the last minute went well. The early part of the fourth quarter did not. But that'll be a work in progress. Like you said, it's not seamless.
Chris did make one play in that win in crunch time that was kind of big. He kind of hid behind a Vic. It was vintage Chris Paul. Just hid behind a Vic screen. His guy guarding him couldn't pick him up. He gives him some space to get to the lane. Somebody else has to come over to help. Dish to Jeremy Sohan for a layup, and it's a 5-point lead. Like when they needed a big basket, Chris got him a basket. There were other moments down the stretch of that game, and the other one that were not so pretty, but that was the one where you're like, oh, that's something they could not have done last year with whoever they had on the floor in that situation.
So
since we did, go ahead, Tom.
Do they get a split at Oklahoma City? They're playing awfully well. Chet Holmgren's off to a great start. Then Utah, I guess. Can we see a split there? Maybe.
You read my mind, Tom. Since we did such a flawless job last week of spinning it forward, we will conclude this week's podcast by trying to repeat that feat. Before we see you next time, your local Cagers will pay a visit to those aforementioned Oklahoma City Thunder. On the second half of a back-to-back, they will visit Will Hardy and the Utah Jazz. This Saturday, another home date against Julius Randle and the Minnesota Timberwolves. Is that right? And then Monday visit to the spanking new sparkling Intuit Dome in Los Angeles. That is 4 games before we convene again. I will start with Tom Orsborn. Give me a record in those 4 games and which games, if any, you project the local Cagers to triumph in.
Well, I'm wondering, does Wemby play the back-to-back at Utah? Probably does. So, yeah, 1 and 2 again.
No, I'm asking for 4.
With the win over Utah. Although Utah's 2 and 2, I don't know who they played, but they're 2 and 2.
But I'm asking for 4 games.
4 games. I'm sorry, Mike.
Not 2.
I was transcribing. I'm sorry.
So you got them starting 1-1, and then the next 2 games. What are they doing there?
I'm gonna go to back-to-back wins at Utah and over Minnesota.
And then a loss at the Clippers.
Well, I don't want to say 3-1. That's a little too.
Okay.
Well, so I'm going to stick with 2 and 2. Yeah, a loss.
2 and 2 with the victories at Utah and at home against the Timberwolves. That's we're putting that we're sending it in there for Tom. That's his prediction. Jeff McDonald.
They better get that Jazz game. And just to correct the record, the Jazz are 0-3. They're winless. They're the only winless team.
Wait a minute. I was looking at the standings here.
They're the only winless team in the West.
Come on, Tom. Get it together. Stop transcribing and pay attention.
They better win that game, and even if it's the second night of a back-to-back. I'd go so far. Like I know that the Spurs hardly ever do this, but I'd go so far as if you have to punt that first game at Oklahoma City to win the second game at Utah, just do it.
Yeah,
and it might happen organically. Like Oklahoma City might just beat them so badly in the first game that guys can have kind of a short night. Like Chris Paul doesn't play 30 minutes and can play again the next night, that sort of thing. But I think they better win that Utah game because
I was looking at the Grizzlies, 2 and 2.
Come on, Tom. So what do you got, Jeff? 4-game record. 1 and 3?
Man, I'm just gonna go conservative and say 1 and 3.
Okay.
I think they could get one of those other 2 at Minnesota or against Minnesota or at the Clippers, but I don't have a lot of faith right now at this point of the season. If you want me to spin it into something positive, like we mentioned last week, after that road trip, things get a little looser. They have some teams they should be able to handle a little easier.
Okay.
More like
so
just
positive
survive this week.
Positive headline from this podcast. Jeff McDonald says heading into first week of November, he's going conservative. I will say that I will say that the local Cagers.
God, I want to make so many jokes and I can't.
That's why I'm trying to move on. I made my joke and I'm not letting you speak because I still want sponsors for this. I will say going into our next podcast, the local Cagers will have gone 2 and 2 this week with victories at the Utah Jazz and at the LA Clippers. How about that? So those are our predictions. We're not going to be all in agreement like we were last week, but we'll see how we did when we talk to you next time. Until then, take care of each other and keep it real.